welcome to Super Belle Sews. My name's Sarah. Thanks for joining me today for my vlog where I'm going to be looking through my 10 most popular makes for 2024. Now, these are the most popular based on how many likes they received on Instagram. So they're not necessarily my favourite, my top 10 in that order. Although I'm pretty pleased with a lot of them, but there are a couple that didn't make the cut that I did love as well. And yeah, it's literally just based off the number of likes. Now, usually previously I've done a top 9, and I started preparing this a couple of weeks ago, but then the top one actually changed in that time. So I thought, let's make a top 10. Now, I know some people also like to do a make 9 at the start of the year. I don't tend to do that because I did it once and I don't think I made a single thing on it. Because priorities change through the year and new patterns come out, and I just like to be able to be a bit fluid. But I do like seeing other people, so do let me know down below if you are planning a make 9 for 2025 and what your priorities for that might be. So I have my list here. I'm going to have to keep looking down because I can't remember which is which. I'm going to count down from the 10 down to the most popular one at the end. I will say it has been a big year for dresses. Every single one of my most liked items is a dress. Every single one. 4 of them are the same pattern. 2 of them are a different pattern but the same as each other. So I've got 4 that are based on one pattern, 2 that are based on a different pattern, and that leaves us with 4 individuals. So I think there's variety, even though there's not a lot of variety in the patterns, there's sort of variety in the fabrics and the styles. So yes, it's just interesting what people like to see, isn't it? I always find it interesting when I look back, because I normally can't remember there might be the odd post where I think, oh, that one was really popular. But there were a couple where I thought, oh, I didn't realise that many people liked that one. So it's always interesting to look back. So we're going to start at number 10. Now, this is actually one of my favourite makes for last year. It is the Cinnamon Daisy Willow dress. And any of you who have followed my channel for a while will know that this has been my pattern for 2024. I've made it, I think 5, might be 6, but loads of times this year. And yeah, I just think it's a great pattern, really quick to sew up. It looks super cute. Yeah, and this is the version that I made to go to Brighton Pride in August. So I'll pop a picture of it here. So I used a sequin fabric from Fabric Godmother. It's on like a mesh, which a lot of sequin fabrics are, which means it's completely see-through. So I had a decision to make on whether I wanted to line it or not. I decided not to, and instead I just wear it with, so for Pride, I think I wore it with black cycling shorts and like a black vest underneath. And in the winter, so I wore it for some Christmassy things, and I just wore it with black tights and again like a black top underneath. Yeah, and I really loved it. It was super fun wearing it for Pride. I obviously wanted something that was sort of colourful and fun. I did wonder if it was a bit short, but I actually liked the length in the end. And I thought for the sort of day, like a day out at Pride is very sort of interactive, and we were like dancing a lot, and we went to the event in I can't think what the park's called, but they do like a concert event, so we went to see Girls Aloud and Sophie Ellis-Bextor, and it's got sort of a festival-y vibe. And so the visible cycle shorts, I thought the look was really cute. I had lots of people come up to me and compliment me on the outfit, and I just love this make. The only changes I made, I gave it a higher back. So the neckline at the back is normally very, very dipped, and I raised that. And I always sort of do my own skirt on the willow because I like a bit more volume. I'm sure I did the ties. So usually you make the ties out of your main fabric. And for this, I think I literally used black bias binding and just use that to make the little ties, because I thought trying to tie sequins in a bow would be a nightmare. So that's number 10. I was a big fan of that one. Number 9 is another willow dress, and this is the one that I made for the last night of my our honeymoon. I didn't actually just wear it on the last night. I think I just photographed it on the last night. So we went to Sicily for our honeymoon, and I had this fabric. Initially, it was planned for a fabric godmother peony dress. So the fabric itself is a fabric godmother, one of their original prints. And I think it's beautiful. And I had this image of making a peony dress, and I actually, basically, when it came to cutting it out, the peony is quite involved. It has a lot of pieces to it, and I just couldn't face the print matching. I sort of decided when I looked at the fabric, I was like, it's one of those patterns where although it's floral all over and there's a lot going on, it sort of has to be symmetrical. And when it came to cutting it out, I just couldn't face cutting out all of those pieces and getting the print to work. So I decided at the last minute that I wanted something that was a bit more simple to construct and to cut. And again, I ended up using the willow dress because it is all of those things. It doesn't have too many pieces. It was much easier to cut it out and keep things symmetrical. The only issue I had was trying to not end up with flower boobs. And in avoiding one pair of flower boobs, I gave myself little flower nipples instead, which was not my plan, but but I think it still looked okay. The fabric is really, really pretty. It feels very special occasion. It is slippery as, so slippery to work with, which again is one of the reasons why I didn't want to make something more involved with it. I do actually have this fabric on the black base, which is like more of a crepe sort of texture. And doesn't have the lurex threads running through. So I think I might, like, maybe that might be something that I would make the peony in if I wasn't under such a time crunch. But I love this dress. I wore it both for our last night and I wore it for our actual wedding anniversary when we were in Sicily, when we went for an amazing tasting menu. So I wore it for that night as well, but I did not photograph it that night. So that is number 9. Now, at number 8, we have the Cashmere Upton dress, and this is my pink Majolica version. So again, if you followed my honeymoon, I made a few sleeveless Upton dresses to wear. I think this one's probably my favourite, actually. So this is a Dolce & Gabbana Deadstock cotton fabric that I purchased from Selvedge and Bolts for a honeymoon dress. And again, it took me a while to settle on what that would be. I used the Upton with the square neck at the front, high neck at the back, sleeveless option, darted bodice. And then again with the Upton, I tend to do my own thing with the skirt, mostly because I feel like all of the Upton skirts call for loads of fabric and sometimes I don't have as much. And especially when it's printed and you're trying to like get the pattern to work, I would prefer to just do that by eye with the fabric I have left. I loved making this one because it had this really cool trim along the border, along the selvage edge, which I then used as the bottom of the skirt and I think looked really, really nice. This felt like a really special dress for me. I also managed to wear it through a trip to a vineyard, and we had a lunch which involved spaghetti and meatballs. And I didn't spill anything down it, so we could still get photos afterwards. And I didn't spill any wine on it either, which is miraculous for me. So again, this is one of my favourite dresses that I've made this year. We came back from honeymoon, and obviously it's not been warm enough to wear it, but I definitely am going to be getting that one out of retirement next summer. You could also wear it, I think, in the spring with like a nice little cardigan, would be cute, or with denim jacket, would be nice. So yes, that is my Upton dress. Then I have there are a few of my honeymoon dresses on here. The next one is a bell dress. So the Stylark bell dress is another favourite dress of mine. I hadn't made one in a little while, actually. It's a bit more involved than the other dresses I've spoken about so far. You have to do some shirring, and it's more fitted. I wanted to make I prioritised making this one as part of the Curvy Coven Sews Bell event, which was in September. I didn't photograph mine till October because of honeymoon. I wanted to make one that felt really classic. My favourite bell that I'd made before is my white broderie on glaze one, which I love. So I picked this like blue and white striped shirting fabric and then these really nice gold buttons, which I thought just elevated it a bit. It is a great pattern. It looks absolutely beautiful on everybody. It also reflects a lot of trends this year for summer dresses. So that sort of like fitted waist yoke, bigger sleeves, V-neck thing has been really popular in the shops this year. And Style Out a Bell is a great inclusive pattern for that sort of design. I feel amazing in it. The only thing is it's low. So it's one of those where I would only wear it for certain occasions because it makes the twins look great, but it's, for me personally, I find it very low cut. So I think there probably are adjustments you can make there. But what I always find with bringing V-necks up is like part of what looks so good sometimes, especially if you're busty, is a low V sort of elongates this area and makes your neck feel longer. So it's always about not ruining the line. I felt the same with my wedding dress. When I tried the original dress on, it was slashed to like above my belly button basically. And the thing is, it looked so good. But I was getting married in a church and I was like, I just cannot have it this low. And so I wanted to bring that up, but I didn't want to lose the sort of like the impact that shape has on someone. I've got quite a small, short torso and like a large chest, and it does things to the proportions, that neckline. So we ended up finding a way with the lace to sort of keep the V element and not make it cut me off. But yeah, that's sort of how I feel about the bell. I feel like that deep V is part of what makes it really flattering, but it is just like a touch too low for me personally. So yeah, I just have to pick the right occasion. But yeah, I love this dress. I also love the sleeves. I always do the one with the double, like with the little puff with the extra shirring in the middle. And I love how that looks. But I know a lot of people don't like that feature on the sleeve. So that's a personal taste thing, but I love it. Okay, next up is the first pattern that was not a tried and tested pattern for me. And that is the Dear and Don't Myosotis, which is another shirt dress pattern. Now, there's been a lot of discourse about Dear and Do and their extended sizing this year. So I'm not going to spend too long going, like, sort of talking about it, but I think that the approach, so they've been bought up by another company, and just like the approach to the extended sizing has not been consistent. I made this dress earlier in the year. The Myosotis is one of those dresses that I admired for ages before they extended the sizing. And I made this lemon dress. So I'll pop a picture of it here. This was really popular on Instagram, I think partly because of the lemons and partly because it's a really nice shaped pattern. In terms of fitting, I found it quite confusing because they're sort of vague in terms of normally what I'd look for is to see which cup size they've drafted it to, or if they have an upper bust measurement, great. They didn't have upper bust measurements, and it said it had been drafted to a C to D cup. And it's like, well, they're different things. So which has it been drafted to? So I had to sort of guess a little bit with the fitting. And as a result, the fit around the neckline isn't great. Like there's excess there. So I think if I make this again, I'd have to just spend some time playing around with it so that the neckline sits properly. So it's a lovely dress. And the thing I always think is, if I bought this in a shop as a ready-to-wear dress before I made clothes, I would have been chuffed with it. Like the neckline thing, I probably wouldn't have even noticed because you just get used to your clothes not fitting you properly. But yeah, I think I can do better in terms of like, I think with a bit of time to adjust it, I could make a better Myosotis dress. But I really love, the fabric is nice. I think it's a Lady McElroy fabric that I bought ages before. And it's a cute swishy dress. Again, I'm going to bring it out for the summer. So a lot of these are ones that sort of are in hibernation at the moment, but will come into their own in the summer. So that was number 6. Now, number 5 is another willow dress, Cinnamon Daisy willow dress, and it's the first one that I ever made. Now, this is one that I didn't realise had been so popular. I think because I used sort of, it's not as jazzy a fabric, so a lot of the ones that I find are popular are ones that have like bold colours or something sort of like a fun print or something on, and or like a really classic look, if they look really classic. And this one was a bit more of a muted fabric. So it was a fabric that I was gifted by Minerva. It was a stretch cotton in navy, and it had these sort of mustard flowers on it. Now this is I wear this dress all the time. It's really great work dress because I treated it like a woven, but because there's a little bit of stretch in the fabric, it's a really comfortable, smart dress to wear. And as I said, it was my first willow dress. So this one is made exactly to the pattern specification. So the skirt on this one is the original skirt. The neckline is the original neckline. The ties are the original ties. And yeah, it's just a great dress. I think the things I enjoyed about it at the time, I enjoyed the construction and I enjoyed the fit. I also liked the time that had gone into getting the finish to be neat so that it looks nice on the inside. So there's a really pleasing finish there's a centre back seam in the bodice that you can omit, and sometimes I do omit depending on the fabric. But the finishing to that seam is really pleasing and neat. And also the bound neckline, I think, is lush. I think it looks good. I think it feels good. I think it's nice to do. I much prefer it to a facing. Yeah, really, really love that dress. So that was like the first one I made that made me go, ooh, the willow is a great dress. And then since then, you know, I've been sewing up willows all over the place. So yes, that was at number 5. Now, at number 4, another one that I hadn't realised had been quite so popular is the Fabric Godmother Fleur dress. Now, this was their new release this year, which is the pattern. It comes as a blouse or a dress with bows down the front. I did make a vlog where I spoke a bit more in detail about this, but so I had sewn this, I think it was for So Fruity, and I initially wanted to make it using this fabric with a little embroidered watermelon on, but I didn't have quite enough, so I ended up mix and matching it with fabric from the same range but that had little pineapples on because I couldn't get more of the watermelons. And again, I used the bodice of this and then I made my own very voluminous skirt. Now, there are lots of things I really loved about this pattern, but there are a few things that I would change. And I think looking back at their publicity photos, I can sort of see the changes there that need to be made as well on the curve model. So the main thing for me is where the bows fell. So they have this really great sort of modesty placket thing that goes underneath, so you're not flashing your bra. But for me, there are 3 bows at the front. They just don't sit in the right place for me. It's the same if I make a shirt or a shirt dress. You want to make sure that there is a button at your fullest point, because if there isn't, then you'll gape. So what I normally do is I place the button there and then I'll use, what's it called, like a button gauge to space out other buttons, which normally means I maybe need an extra button or 2. And with the bows, I think I would probably, if you're busty, switch to 4 bows, have 1 at your fullest bust point, 1 below, and then 2 above. You do want one right at the top because it's what holds the neckline in place. So if I made this again, I would do that, and I would also slightly elongate the bodice. Now, this is something that I had noticed. I didn't really identify that's what it was, but I had noticed in their original publicity photos that where the waist seam sits on the sort of smaller sized models is slightly lower than where it sits on the curve model, which means it doesn't seem to fall like at the same point of the waist. For me, the waist seam was like just under my bust line, but not enough to sit like at the thinnest part of my waist. So there were a couple of adjustments again that I will be making. I probably will make this dress again, but it was very, very popular anyway, and I do really like it as a dress. But again, I think there are just a few things that will make it more wearable for me, which will mean it'll be something I reach for. With this one, I ended up, because of the bow situation, I ended up stitching up to the second bow, so it's closed there rather than the original's open, which there's no reason why you couldn't do that anyway, to be honest. So it's not a big deal, but it's just, I think, worth knowing that. And I think with the other ties, I could make it so I don't need to do that effectively. So that was number 4. Now, number 3 was another cashmere Upton, and it's another dress from my honeymoon, and this is the polka dot one. So partly I think the like was because the backdrop's so good. This was in Amalfi from our apartment we stayed in, and this was actually a last minute addition to my honeymoon wardrobe, and it was because I saw a dress that looked kind of like this, that was from Monsoon, on it was like a curve influencer person's Instagram, and I loved it, and they didn't have it left in my size, and I couldn't really afford it anyway at the time, but they didn't have it left in my size. But I just suddenly thought, like, oh, that'd be such a sort of fun look for honeymooning on the Amalfi Coast. So I started a search for some fabric. I found this gorgeous polka dot satin, and just I had a really clear image in my head of how I wanted that to transpire. And so I already obviously had the Upton cut out because I'd made 2 others for the honeymoon. And so I just quickly sort of whizzed this one up and ended up being the most popular one of the lot. Again, I think that's partly because of the whole aesthetic of that picture. Like, I think it's partly the dress, and then it's partly the styling and the backdrop and the vibe. But again, really fun dress. I put loads of extra volume in the skirt. The fabric was very reasonably priced, so I could sort of get enough to like really play around with the volume in the skirt there. And also because with my other 2 Uptons for the honeymoon, which are both Majolica fabrics, I had to be a bit careful about how the print came together. Whereas for this one, because it wasn't like that type of print, it meant that I could just throw loads of pieces together and it would work. So this was a really fun one to make, and I'm glad that everyone loved it. I feel like if I look back on my honeymoon, that picture is like the essence that I wanted to give. So I love that one as well. And then, so this one is at number 2. The ones at number 2 and number 1 both came towards the end of this year. So this one I thought would be number 1, and it was number 1 until very recently. So this is my 4th Cinnamon Daisy Willow in this collection, and it is my velvet concert dress version. So I'll put a picture here. Any of you who followed my first few videos of Vlogmas were about putting this dress together. So I, as usual, used the bodice from the Willow, and then I did my own skirt. So I extended it to be maxi, and I added an extra panel in. So the Cinnamon Daisy Willow normally is made up of 2 skirt panels, a front and a back. And in mine, when I'm able to, I turn it into 3. So to make sure there's not a seam at the front, I will put... So I'll sew the 3 panels together so you get like a big loop. And then I will take one panel, put the centre of that panel at the centre front of the skirt, and of the bodice, sorry. And then you measure round and then split it so that you have a seam every 1/3 of the way round of the measurement. And that tends to mean that you have, instead of having your side seams, you have 2 seams like sort of between, I don't know, so sort of at north, east and northwest, if you're looking at a compass. So at an angle like this, but you don't see them as obviously. And then you have a centre back seam in the skirt as well. The only thing this threw off for me is I was going to do pockets, but they would have fallen in a slightly weird place, and I think been too obvious in the line if I put them in the side seams, as the side seams were now towards the front. I also used double-sided velvet ribbon for the ties on this dress, and I slightly heightened the neckline at the back, just very, very slightly. And I lined the bodice. That was the other thing I did. So just because, I knew the skirt was going to be a bit heavy. So I knew that the skirt was going to be a little bit heavier. So I wanted to give the bodice a little extra oomph to, hold up the weight of the skirt. And I am obsessed with how this dress turned out. I think it looks gorgeous. I loved singing in it. I really love wearing it. I got loads of compliments on it. The only thing, because normally I make the Willow in a printed fabric, with this one, with the velvet, I felt like the waist, the darts you have at the waist, which is where you insert your ties, were like a little bit long on me. So I could have ideally would have taken like an inch or so off so that they didn't hit me at my apex, basically. So that's the only thing that I would probably change. And I might change that just in my Willows generally moving forward. I could have altered it with a bra, with the right bra maybe, but yeah, I just, when I'm singing, I don't want to be wearing things. I don't like to put too much extra pressure on my shoulders because I've tried to keep it all relaxed and open. So yeah, that would be the only thing. But I am obsessed with that dress. I love that dress. And that came in at number 2. Now at number 1 is the recent dress that I made for Fabric Godmother using their Rowan winter gingham. And I was surprised. I think maybe because it's fabric godmother, because I love it, but I think it's like less showy than some of the other things I've made. But I think maybe because it was a collaboration with fabric godmother, it obviously got more love from their end as well. And yeah, people really liked the tucks, the undulating tucks. So I made the Tilly and the Buttons Marnie dress. And I do think that the fabric and the pattern really marry well together. Like, I think the pattern really shows off the gingham. Like, the undulating tucks, I think, just worked really nicely in that fabric. So I was pleased that that was so well received. There are lots of things I love about that dress. I think the details in it are really good. The tucks, I think, look great. The sleeves are beautiful. And yeah, I think to make it I want more volume in the skirt. Like, I wanted it to be really like a peasant dress, and I feel like I didn't quite get the proportions of that because I basically extended it, because normally it's a blouse or a mini dress, and I wanted it to be midi, and I think I need to play around with just getting a bit more volume at the bottom. I think maybe putting in a like a ruffle tier might help with that, or I think just cutting it slightly differently, because I pretty much cut it straight down. So yeah, those are some things for me to play with, but I was really pleased with it. I love the colours, and I just feel very grateful that things have been well received this year, and that all of the things that were on my top 10 were things that I really enjoyed wearing. If I think back to anything that I really liked that maybe didn't make it, I would say so I made the Itch to Stitch Andy's jacket, which is a coat for soft shell, which again is maybe not the most exciting thing to photograph, but in terms of like wearable things I've made, that is definitely up there. So I'll put a picture of that one here. I wear that a lot. It's really functional, and it's one of those things that I wear and people just go, I can't believe you've made that. Because it's such a like technical fabric, I think people just don't expect me to have made it. So I'm really proud of that one. There are other things I made for the honeymoon that I really loved. So my other Upton dress, where I did the sort of bow sleeves, the bow straps, I really like that one. And I'm sure there are other things I've made in the year that I've really liked. I don't know. So it's just interesting, isn't it? Because the things that are the most popular often are, not always, because some of those dresses I wear a lot, but a lot of them are more like occasion dresses. So the velvet ball gown is very much an occasion dress. Some of the honeymoon dresses are very much occasion dresses, and obviously in terms of photos they are more interesting things for people to look at, but they don't get as much wear. So it's just interesting, isn't it, sort of seeing how things lie. So anyway, I'm going to stop blethering on because I've got to the point, which is to tell you what my top 10 makes were. I would love to know if you've had a favourite make for the year. Is there something that you've made that you've really loved? Is there anything on this list that is different? So do you have something that is on there that you think should have been number one? Or maybe you look at the top ones and you just think, ugh, I hate those. I would love this one instead, or whatever. I would love to know what you think. Obviously, it's all subjective, so I'm literally just going by number of likes. So yeah, I think I would say my favourites of the year are, not in this order necessarily, but my sequin willow I love, my velvet willow I love, my pink Majolica Upton is one of my faves as well. So I think those are probably my top 3. So they're obviously all in the top 10, but they weren't everyone else's top 3. So yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Anyway, I have a few more plans of vlogs to make towards the end of this year and the start of next year, and I'll be talking a bit more about what my sewing plans are moving forward as well. But I hope you've enjoyed seeing my recap. I hope you've had a really, really good Christmas and that you're looking forward to the new year. And I will see you soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.